Happy New Year. January's a weird month. It's dark, the weather's miserable, unless you're in the southern hemisphere, in which case I imagine January's altogether far too warm. It's right after the holidays, so a lot of people are flat broke, and yet we put all this pressure on January. January is the month that you're going to get back into shape. It's the month you're going to sort out your sleeping habits. It's the month that you're going to start this big project that you've been looking forward to. That's a lot of pressure to put on one month, especially a month that is honestly best designed for going into hibernation. Now, I'm not religious, but if you'll bear with me, I'm going to talk about religious holidays for a minute. In the olden days, which is a phrase used very technically by historians to denote some time pre the modern era, in Northern Europe there was the tradition of a Yule log. That was a large piece of wood, was brought indoors. It was supposed to burn for about 12 days, and as long as the Yule log burned, you didn't do very much. You'd eat and drink and meet up with friends and family, and there would be games and parties and probably dancing. Human history is pretty consistent. There's always dancing. But you wouldn't do any work for at least 12 days. Maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more, depends how good your Yule log was. And even coming up quite recently, a lot of people don't know, or if they do know, they misremember because got to make that sweet, sweet AdSense revenue in December. The 12 days of Christmas starts on Christmas Day, and it runs until the 5th or 6th of January, depending on your tradition, which is called Epiphany. In some countries, it's the Day of the Kings, or the Dia del Rey, which is the end of the festive period. The 25th of December being the day that Jesus is born, and the 6th or 5th of January being the day that the three wise men arrive. That's the festive period. And the point of the 12 days of Christmas is that during that time, you were supposed to do nothing except eat and drink and meet friends and family and probably dance, because it's humans, there's always dancing. Can you see where I'm going with this? These days, with capitalism making every time of the year a good time for working, and even with our union-backed holidays, you probably still didn't have as much time off as you wanted. And how much of that time did you actually spend resting? Did you travel to see family? Did you have to shop and cook a big meal or multiple big meals? Did you host parties? Did you use that time to catch up on all the work around the house that you haven't been able to do? Whatever your circumstances, I'm willing to bet that you're coming into January feeling like you could actually do with about a month of hibernation, but you can't because you're going back to work, because everyone else is setting their New Year's resolutions, because you've got goals, because you've got that big project and it's a new year, and so now it's time to get started. Now it's time to do all the things that you've been putting off because there wasn't time. That's a lot of pressure for 1 month. God, a year. So right now, we'll call it a cutting table in my workroom, which is about 2 meters by 1.5, 140, is not very usable. I have too much fabric for the amount of storage space that I have for fabric by a long way, so it's currently piled up in that corner over there. Next to it is a pile of costumes that I got out to wear for various things, like the video I did professing my love for a certain chocolate bar. They're right next to it there. There's the project that I started aiming to have done by Christmas in pieces over there. 2 more unfinished projects just behind you. A pile of patterns on top of it. There's all the leftover gubbins from my experiments into tablet weaving, because it turns out I love tablet weaving. I'm going to do a lot more of it. That's all still there. Now I could tidy. Tidying would be a good idea, and indeed you should tidy your sewing room. I'm watching you, okay? Tidy your sewing room. But do you know what else there is in this room? Over on my Kallax, I have 1, 2, 3 boxes that are just full of things that are in some point between started and not quite finished. There's one project which is still at the fabric stage. I was partway through doing pattern alterations 2 years ago. That's in there. There's this coat which I wore for one LARP event in 2019. Was supposed to wear it again in 2020. That event obviously got cancelled, and it was rescheduled for 2021. That event also got cancelled. It now looks like the system won't run again, but I never finished doing the closures on the front. So this currently has 2 hooks and eyes, too few, and it sat like that for 3 years. So that's one thing. I have this dress, which I wore once, again for a LARP event in 2018. Gosh, was it 2017? I made a mistake when making it. It was supposed to have shoulder straps for the sleeves to attach to. I missed that. It doesn't have shoulder straps. which means that doesn't quite work. That just needs fixing. This, so I got really interested in, there is a Tudor technique for making shifts out of finished panels that you then do an insertion stitch to connect together. And I saw it and I thought it looked wonderful, but this was 2015. Costuming internet was not what it is now. I was not the sewist that I am now, so I didn't understand how to actually do it, and so I've got all the pieces and couldn't figure out how to connect them together. I know now. I've in fact watched someone do exactly what I wanted to do, and I know exactly how to do it. Just need to do a lot of fiddly handwork to finish it off. Oh, and there's this. This dress, very fantasy, loosely inspired by the Italian Renaissance, fraying quite badly, might need to do something about that. This dress has been in this state of almost but not quite finished since before I met the man who is now my husband. And do you want to know what it needs? What absolutely floored me 8-9 years ago that I could not get past? Didn't know how to do eyelets. That's it. That's all this dress needs to be wearable. It probably wants sleeves, and I will at some point make it sleeves, but in order to be a working dress, all it needs is half a dozen eyelets, if that. I know how to do eyelets. I've been able to do hand-done eyelets for a very long time, but it's just sat there. But wait, I can't actually start on all the projects that are in those boxes because I also have the pile. And I'm not going to show you the pile in its entirety because it's embarrassing, but behind the door of my sewing room, next to the spinning wheel and the ink loom and the dye pot and the 4 separate sets of novelty Halloween sheets I probably didn't need, there is an enormous pile of things. Clothes. These are clothes from my wardrobe. They're not costumes, they're clothes that I wear, or rather would, except there's something wrong with them. And either I've been tolerating it for a while, or I haven't, and it's gone into that pile, and it's stayed in that pile for, well, you'll see. We are going to get to this. But before I dive any more into the details, I want to get to the thesis of this video. Yes, it's January, we're in with the big words. I am pretty certain you have a pile because everyone I know who crafts has a pile. It can be your unfinished objects, it can be your mending, it can be those alterations that you swear you're going to get to at some point, or it can be the stuff lurking at the back of your wardrobe that you don't wear because there's just something, it's missing a button, seams come undone, doesn't quite fit, and just needs a little bit of work, and you haven't done it yet. My challenge to you this January, regardless of what your big plans, what your New Year's resolutions, what your yearly themes, what your challenges that you want to take part in are, no big 2022 retrospectives, no big 2023 plans and goals for the year that you know you're not going to revisit, and you know that some of them just won't happen, either for reasons outside of your control or for reasons entirely within your control, but very much justified. There's never a bad reason for deciding you don't want to do something. I want you to leave all of that stuff, the new big project, the dream, the goal for 2023, at least until February. Because right now, what I want to challenge you to focus on, how many things you can get out of your pile in January. And just to be clear, you're going to have to try and beat me. So, what have we got? So this was a vintage, I think 1970s dress that I've worn quite a lot. It is, I do not actually know the technical term for this material. I have always referred to it as crimpolene. It is an objectively horrible substance, but there you go. I quite like this dress. I wore it for a very long time. It used to have sleeves. The sleeves were tearing because they were made of chiffon, so I took those off. However, I have been unable to wear it because the zip is broken. It's got a couple of teeth missing right at the bottom, which means that it keeps, when it gets to the bottom of the zip run, it keeps popping open, and then I have to try and jiggle it back onto. It's not a separating zipper, and it keeps separating. That's probably the best way of explaining it. So all I think I need to do for this is jiggle that back together, sew a stop at the bottom of the zip, and then it's got a hook at the top that is a little bit loose, and it did have a thread loop to attach to, and it doesn't right now. So that's all that one needs. I really like this skirt, and I have stopped really wearing it because the waistband is elastic. It's a wide piece of elastic and it's stretched out over time, which, because this is a maxi skirt, means that it slides further down my hips and then I tread on it. Not very practical. So I think what I'm going to do is take the waistband off, unpick all that, and then put a drawstring waistband on, probably using my overlocker. It's a new addition to the sewing room, courtesy, at least in part, to my wonderful Ko-fi donators. I honestly wasn't expecting to even hit that goal on Ko-fi, and I did, and more, so I was able to afford a much better overlocker than I thought I was going to be able to get. I'm very happy with this one. The reviews are very good. Overall, very excited to get to grips with it. So that's what that one needs. If you've seen my thrift shop LARP costume video, you'll remember that there was a few things in there that were a little bit worse for wear, having come from a charity shop. This skirt is great and I would like to wear it, but it has a beaded detail along the bottom, which is just a little bit loose or falling off in places. So I just need to go through and make some minor repairs. This dress has a beautiful beaded collar. It's all covered in diamantes and settings, and it's just missing one. I think I need to order some more silver set diamantes. Doesn't have to be exactly the same, but similar enough, and just fill in that gap. Probably 5 minutes work. And then there was this, which was the, Premium Soft Grandad. That's my nickname in high school. This doesn't really fit me. It's a men's medium, and I am a men's extra small, for I am but a Victorian waif. Again, I think the solution here is going to be the overlocker, because it's a stretch knit fabric. I'm probably going to put it on inside out, mark up what I want to take off, run it through the overlocker, shorten the sleeves a little bit. This is a slightly bigger project. When Morgan Donna made her split colour, giant circle split skirt trousers things, it usually happens when Morgan makes a video, my brain went, well, I need that, and I decided to put a bit of my own spin on it. I'd always wanted to make a pair of hakama, which are Japanese traditional pleated trousers. I had 2 coordinating bolts of kimono silk. One's red, one's navy. They both have butterflies on them. They're both, I can never remember the English name for this. It's a warp printed fabric, so it's ikat? Is it called ikat in English? I knew some of the principles, but to get the details right, I followed a very detailed tutorial by Billy Matsunaga, who is Birinyan on YouTube. Her videos are great. I highly recommend them. I did not do great measuring. So the first time I wore them, it became obvious that they were much too long, and I foolishly decided to try to go for my daily walk on the canal towpath, and it had rained, so they got muddy, and then I had to wash them, and because it's wool, they shrank slightly unevenly, and they were still too long. I was so dispirited, I just put them away and didn't really think about them again. But it's January, it's time to think about them again. I think I'm just going to have to cut the hems off, re-hem them. The nice thing about hakama is that you can actually, they are usually worn to a Western eye quite short, so I don't think I need to worry about that too much. And then I will need to press the pleats back in, and that is the part that we'll need some emotional preparation for, but we can do it. I believe in us. They are very cozy. This is a very nice top. I think it's actually supposed to be a short dress, but I'm tall and don't really do short dresses, so it's a top. It's made of a burnout velvet and it's got a slip inside. However, the slip is only attached by spaghetti straps at the 2 shoulder seams. One of them has come undone, which makes putting it on and off an absolute nightmare. Obviously, the shoulder needs to be reattached, but I also think what I'm going to do is put bar tacks inside the side seams between the side seam of the slip and the side seam of the outer, which should just hold everything in place. There's 2 ways of doing bar tacks. You can either basically do a thread loop with buttonhole stitches, but in a straight line, or you can finger crochet the thread into a chain and then secure off the end. I don't know which one I'll try. Maybe both. I don't know which one I like better yet, because it's not a technique I do very often. This is I can't remember what they call this, probably a beach cover-up or something. It is a chiffon duster, originally from Boohoo. It's very cheap, but it is a bit too big for me, which too big in the body is fine. I can wear it as like a wraparound robe, but it's too long in the sleeves and it's definitely too long in the hem. The current edge is just overlocked, which I don't have this much grey thread. I don't want to buy this much grey overlocker thread, so I might see if I can find some grey thread and spool it, or I might do a different hem. I don't know yet. This dress now. You're getting into my goth days. This dress I have always loved. It's not in very good condition, but that, to be honest, well, it's black lace over a dark red lining, and the lining is pretty aggressively beaten up. I am 90% certain, I can't prove it, but I am 90% certain I know why the lower hem of this dress is quite so beaten up, because that's what happens when you wear formal dresses with spiky buckled goth boots. That's what happens to your clothes. I've never particularly been a spiky buckled goth boots kind of person. I am a elegant Victorian or Doc Martens kind of person. But I think the person who owned this before me was also a goth. However, it has a very severe boned bodice that has a lot of bust shaping that looks really weird on me because I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't have bust shaping. There's nothing to fill it out. So I think what I want to do to make this wearable is to actually turn it into a skirt. But I like the vampiness of the black boned bodice, so I think I might actually make it a high-waisted skirt. I'm basically just going to scoop out under the bust, and I don't know whether I'm going to go, I do like that shape, or I could be very vampy and I could bring it up into a point in the middle. If I do that, I'm going to have to insert another bone, which is not a problem. I could do that, but if I don't, the point won't stand up. But whatever I decide to do, it's really just going to be cutting off the excess, making it sure it's symmetrical on both sides, possibly inserting another bone, and then probably whip stitching the top, lining and outer folded inwards so it's all neat. I may be making this sound more simple than it actually is. We're gonna give it a go. This dress now, I am 99% certain that this dress is vintage. If I had to guess, I would put it at the 40s or earlier. It just has a bunch of stuff. It's sheer lace with a lining, and in the back, the lining is beautifully shaped around the seams. It has a side placket to close that closes with snaps. I'm pretty sure that this dress was homemade. I say I'm pretty sure. I am certain this dress was homemade. So I could be wrong just because maybe it was made later from a vintage pattern. Maybe whoever made it was just making it up. It is not my usual style. It is beautiful. It was not in amazing condition when I got it, and I'm afraid to say I have only made it worse because I have worn this. So what this needs, and this is a big ask, I need to go through and carefully sew back together all of the tears in this very fragile net lace. Like I said, it's a big ask. I'm not even certain if it's doable, but I think I would like to try. We are almost at the bottom of the pile. Oh wait, no, hang on. There's another thing that needs to go in the pile. I knitted this little capelet. Again, we're pushing 7 years ago now. I used to knit a lot more than I do now. I knit a lot before I got really into sewing. I was always a bit into sewing, but I wasn't like YouTube channel about LARP kit into sewing. I also didn't LARP back then. It doesn't have a closure. I made little like military style straps. I was going to sew buttons. I didn't do that. So that needs some buttons sewn on. I can't believe it's been sat there waiting on buttons for 7 years. I do know there is an embroidered shirt sitting over there. We might get to that. I find embroidery incredibly tedious and I've kind of run out of steam on that one, so we shall see. We have now reached the bottom of the pile and you can see how far back it goes because does anyone remember my witch costume from 2 Halloweens ago? So the blouse never got closures, and it didn't matter for the reveal because I was wearing it under a dress. I think I will probably always wear this under a dress because it's chiffon. I guess I could wear it over a tank top or something. Yeah, we'll keep our options open. It needs closures. I don't know whether that's going to be hooks and eyes or buttons. I'm not loving the thought of putting buttonholes into chiffon, but we'll figure that out when we get to it. And finally, the dress from my whimsical witch's costume. This was made using a kirtle pattern from the Tudor tailor. I did not do a mock-up, so the bodice didn't really fit. There is a whole saga to this that I will not get into in this video. However, let's just say I have been practicing. I am up to 7, made 7 since this one. I'm kind of obsessed, I'm not gonna lie. There's at least 2 more in me. Because the skirt is cartridge pleated onto a finished bottom of the edge of the bodice. And I did not take the cartridge pleat gathering threads out because I don't. I can unpick this bodice. The skirt will stay as it is because I edited my own video and discovered that, unknown to me, apparently, there was leftover fabric that I rolled up and put back into my fabric storage and then blanked from my memory. I have enough red corduroy left to make a new bodice that will just replace this one. And this bodice will probably, honestly, it doesn't fit that bad. It'll probably go into the LARP kit pile as just a thing I can wear on its own as like a fantasy bustier kind of thing. And when I have done that, well, the pile isn't cleared, but we might decide we're done at that point. There are a couple more things I could finish off, but when I say finish off, for quite a few of them, I actually mean start. We'll see how we go. All right then, once I have done all of those, which is not a small task, many of them don't seem to be very big. I'm reasonably sure some of them are going to be measured in minutes sewing, not even half hours. And then I'll be able to clear down my Christmas project, and then I'll be able to start work on clearing down my fabric stash, because it's gotten out of hand, and one thing I would like to do this year is get to the point where my fabric stash fits into the space assigned for fabric stash. I don't feel that's too much to ask. I say goals for the year. I'm going to try not to buy any more fabric until that happens. We shall not talk about the 15 meters of silk I bought recently. Just gonna leave that alone. In a moment, you will see a tally of how many things are on the pile and how many of the things I have done by the time this video comes out. And I would love to invite you all to jump into the comments section and let me know what your tallies are. How many things do you have in the pile? Keep me updated on your progress, and at the end of January, we can see whether you beat me or not. Because if there is one thing my ADHD brain loves, it's competition. Thank you so much for watching. Down in the description box, you'll find a link to my Ko-fi page where you can become a supporter of the channel. My Ko-fi donations last year literally paid for an overlocker, so I am overjoyed with the support that I've received. And as a little incentive, you'll also get early access to all of my videos 24 hours before anyone else. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep the YouTube gods happy. Follow me on Instagram if you'd like to see weekly pictures of my cat. Dream big, and I'll see you next time.